me. They've printed false stories and slanderous allegations. And when I have a blue check mark, when I have that verification, if I go to that post on Salon, for example, that's lying about me, I can present a rebuttal, and it will be bumped up to the top of the comment section because I'm a verified account. And not only that, but other verified accounts, which are typically media who are making these accusations, will see my rebuttal, because typically verified accounts, unless they set their standards otherwise, are only looking at other verified accounts for the most part. So it gives me a small way. Yes, I know it's a small way, but it's a way to defend myself. And I'll never have a platform as big as Salon, but with the verification, I could at least stand toe-to-toe with them on Twitter, and now I've lost that. It essentially turns Twitter into a liberal bully pulpit for the media, where they are the reigning kings and queens, and we are the peasants in the field, and we can never enter through the castle walls. They don't even have to listen to us. And they can say whatever they want about us. And for me in particular, being fully doxxed, being a family woman, my family had to sell her house and move recently because of death threats. So when these articles like Salon run and they accuse me of these horrible things that aren't true, I can at least defend myself to a small degree, and the average person coming across the Salon article can at least hear my side of things before they decide to go off and threaten to kill me or my children. And again, it might be a small thing, but it was important to me. I had gone through the verification process. I had earned my right to be on that platform, and quite frankly, I've gone through hell to earn my right to be on that platform, and because of what the media chose to do.
So, Twitter had another pang of consciousness. This is like the second cleanse that I've seen of the alt-right from Twitter. There was in the summer of 2015, there was a big cleanse of alt-righters. ISIS and other latent terrorist groups from the internet. This latest one seems to have less pushback from this free speech brigade, which is fascinating to me. It seems like finally the alt-right is having to fight for themselves and have to fight for their own rights instead of just sitting back and letting a bunch of classical liberals run up and cry about the disenfranchisement of the Nazis from their God-given rights. The most probably outspoken person in this purge, and this purge is a little different in that some people got suspended, some people got banned. But what makes this purge special, and what hurt a lot of alt-righters and alt-lighters, even though I don't really make a distinction on substance between those two groups, but apparently they do, because the threshold is alt-light allows right-wing Jewish people in, and the alt-light allows neoconservatives basically in, and then the alt-right, their whole threshold is no Jews. So they're just run-of-the-mill Republicans, but also they're allowed to engage in explicit racism and anti-Semitism. Baked Alaska was hilariously banned and forced to take his grievances to an Arby's parking lot for some reason, where he streamed for 9 hours bitching it to random strangers about how his free speech rights had been taken away from Jack, even though he can go to Gab, he can go to Minds.com, he can stream on YouNow. There's so many other platforms that he can go to. It's not like someone arrested him and made it so that Baked Alaska couldn't cry about his non-blind, maced eyes to the people. Loomer made a pretty common comparison, and so did a wife with a purpose who lost her verification of, which is really repugnant to me, that the new wave of Nazis are very much so obsessed with presenting themselves as the new Jews. Whenever any sort of victimization, quote-unquote, happens to the alt-right or their confederates, they immediately default to quoting they came for so and so person and I did nothing, and then they came for me. This famous quote from an intellectual who had survived the Nazis, who talked about when they came for Jewish people that he didn't put up a protest, and then finally when the authoritarian regime came even for just Germans that didn't agree with the Nazis, he felt regret. So and this to me is a call out to their mama in the Sargonite community, this thing of, oh, if you don't defend my rights, they're coming for your edgy jokes next. You know what I'm saying? That's what this has always been premised on. The alt-right skeptic meme alliance has always been based on, we both like making jokes about gas chambers, we both think Auschwitz is funny, let's band together, including the high-end edgelords like PewDiePie and iDubbbz and H3H3, who recently had Nazi intellectual professor Jordan Peterson on his program, and Dave Rubin, who recently had Nazi intellectual Stephen Molyneux on his program. So, the blue checkmark Holocaust is so exaggerated and so in poor taste. You think a bunch of anti-Semites would be able to comprehend the irony of claiming a second Shoah because they don't have, the innocent version of what verification means is so that you're telling the right Richard Spencer to go fuck himself. But in effect, because that's what we talk about here on this channel, is not premise, but what something means in practice. In practice, verification, and the reason that the alt-right is so hurt about losing verification, is a means of legitimacy. If Jay-Z, Beyonce, and Richard Spencer are all verified by Twitter, they all have that blue check mark, which, by the way, is not just a verification of identity, but as Wife with a Purpose pointed out, gives, that verification puts them in the media conversation. That verification lets Richard Spencer talk to the New York Times and piggyback onto their media presence. So to the alt-right, losing the blue check mark is very much so about, how am I going to represent white genocide in a mainstream narrative? How am I going to be able to strike back against my political enemies if I'm just another, it turns them into tinfoil hatters. That's what I think is so important about not verifying Nazis, is that it is a way for the platform of Twitter to point at these people and go, these are not legitimate ideas. These are people sitting around in a basement somewhere talking about the Jewish question. They shouldn't be on par with like ABC News and the Associated Press. So yes, my stance is no verification for Nazis. I would go even further as to say no platforms for Nazis, because I don't support a Twitter or a Facebook or a YouTube where you're allowed to advocate for a peaceful ethnic cleansing and stuff like that. And if you disagree with me, because again, this is a post-internet conversation, if you disagree with me, then please show me the time in which broadcast television or even cable news had conversations where someone like Richard Spencer would pass the threshold for standards and practices. So I know that censorship can be destructive to a community and a conversation, but I do think that the internet is starting to realize what television before it had to come to terms with, is that in order to have a mainstream platform, you need to disinvite certain elements, and there has to be, for YouTube, for Twitter, for Facebook, in order for these platforms to function, there have to be standards and practices, because that's what it means to be a community. You know what I mean? Being a community means that you take a stance on who gets to participate in the political conversation. The political conversation is, like I've always said, a decision about who lives, who dies, who eats, who gets hurricane aid, who gets health care. And I don't think that we should, as a online community and an in real life community, take the risk of allowing people who are advocating for the annihilation and disenfranchisement of various different groups to wear the icon of legitimacy.